The Oracle Network. Look deeper.
Welcome to Brew Crime. I'm Mike.
And I'm Beck.
And I'm Nina.
All right, this episode we're going to cover the Highway of Tears in British Columbia. I think a lot of British Columbians know the story, not maybe all the details. So we're going to try to share a little bit more about the Highway of Tears and talk about some of the women that have gone missing. So, Nina, do you want to start it out?
Yeah, I'll start it out. So before I talk about the pairing that I brought, to introduce what we're going to do today. If you guys all remember last year when we covered Valentine's Day, we did a story on the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And what we ended up doing is each picking a story that related to that subject and actually merged it. So we're doing something similar today. So I'm going to talk about what the history and what kind of the name of Highway of Tears comes from. And then it'll be followed by Mike and Beck actually talking about specific cases that are tied in with the story. So we're also back to finally pairing again and fulfilling the brew part of brew crime. Okay, so for my pairing, I picked beer from the Driftwood Brewing. It's called Cooked Coast because of the name. I'm going to show you, we're still doing the Zoom calls for our pairing, so I'm just going to show Mike and Beck what it looks like.
Nice. Just send me a picture of that too.
I will, yeah. It's a pretty nifty bottle. It's got writing on it, which I'm going to try to read. It says, okay, on a misshapen island away from the eyes of the world, the inhabitants have twisted together German noble hops and Munich malt and unholy amber ale brewed to trick the tongue. Do not speak its name. A crooked gesture will suffice. So I already said Cooked Coast at the beginning. I guess I should have read that before reading the name so I don't get into shits. It's a 5.1% alcohol. It's one of the tall, pretty bottles, 650 milliliters. And it's brewed in Victoria, British Columbia. Mike, do you want to add anything to the beer? Because I sure shit won't be able to describe what it tastes like.
I haven't had that beer in a long time. But I think that the pairing there is pretty good considering northern BC is kind of an island on its own, even though it's mainland, right? It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's not really connected to the Metro Vancouver bustle.
No, so I'll pour it. And it's definitely not a lager. So, yeah. It kind of looks like a darker beer, but not dark. I don't know, Mike. You're usually the one who does the...
Yeah, it looks kind of an amber or reddish color, yeah.
It doesn't have any head on it. Hey, I know that. It smells like beer. I tried to do the Mike swishel. Sorry, guys. I mean, let's taste it. You know what? I like it.
Super. Good thing, because that's a big bottle to dislike.
It's flatter than I thought. It's not very carbonated, which is a little interesting. It feels like I'm drinking drunk apple juice.
More English style than probably.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I just Googled the beer, just a review off Beer Advocate. So let's see, what do they say? This person says, medium carbonation, very streaky lacing on the side of the glass, but very small amount of head. Smells of citrus, caramel, and bready dough malt. There's a nice hot bitterness to back up the malty sweetness. So that's kind of what that person said.
Cool. So yeah, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about actually the history of the Highway of Tears. And it's pretty interesting because I thought I understood what was going on. And I understood that there was lots of injustices that were done with the RCMP and just the police force here and how they were going about treating these cases or how not seriously they were taking that something was actually going on. So personally, I actually found it really eye-opening to just try to understand why these cases weren't getting the attention, especially considering the span of how many years something was going on and why it took almost 30 years for someone to be like, oh, maybe this is all linked and it's an actual thing.
Yeah, maybe this is fucked up.
Yeah, definitely some more investigation was needed. So to start my research, obviously the first thing I did was Google, because you guys all know how much I love the Google. And honestly, there's so much information online about kind of the origins of the Highway of Tears, of the stories. I decided to kind of focus the information that I was finding or that I'm going to reference today on information I found on the Canadian Encyclopedia website. There's also a dedicated website called highwayoftears.org. So I pulled information from that as well. Obviously, we'll share the links to that for the sources and everything that I'm going to talk about. But I would highly suggest for people to go and check out the highwayoftears.org website, just because there's obviously still a lot of missing women, unsolved cases, lots of information there. So if anyone in any way can shed light on a disappearance on any of the cases, definitely there's all the resources there to share what you may know, think you may know. Obviously, I think anything helps. So yeah, share the link for that. So the Highway of Tears refers to a 724 kilometer length of Yellowhead Highway, which is Highway 16 in British Columbia, where many women, mostly Indigenous, probably about 95% were Indigenous women, have disappeared or been found murdered along the highway. The Highway of Tears, and it's important to say, is part of a larger national crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. As we kind of alluded to, this has been something that's been going on for many, many years. Some of the first cases were dated back to 1969, and it's finally just getting the right support, right, I guess, police attention, perhaps is a good way to say it, to investigate. The RCMP's investigation into the highway murders refers to as Project EPANA. That's the letter EPANNA, which began in the fall of 2005. That's 36 years after the first case was tied to a string of cases given the same circumstances surrounding the discovery of the victims' bodies. So first case that they found, as I mentioned, was 1969. 2005, they finally decided to put together a team to actually look into all of these cases. It's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, what was the final straw that finally made them go, ah, shit, I guess we've got to do something. Like, give me a break.
I don't understand, right? Like, I tried to look into kind of the police's position, trying to understand. Obviously, it is a long stretch of highway, so whose responsibility is it to look into? How does it go into the national database? You know, a lot of women who I think sometimes the assumption was just ran away from home and left, right? So I think from what I was seeing anyways, that a lot of them were like, well, you know, the women worked in a dangerous profession, which, you know, not all of them obviously were part in prostitution, or a lot of them also would just hitchhike,
yeah,
right? Which was also considered a dangerous activity.
Well, it's northern BC too. My in-laws lived up there for a long time and owned a general store, and there's no transport. If you don't own a vehicle, the only way to get around is to hitchhike. With Greyhound leaving Western Canada, that was like the one way you could get around, is if you were on a Greyhound route, you could get in and out. And I don't know if they've even replaced the Greyhound now in northern Canada or northern BC. So a lot of people can't afford to own a vehicle up there, especially on the reserves. So you have to hitchhike, and it's a fact of life up there.
Yeah, that's what I read as well. And one of the, I forget which place now, I'm sorry, but one of them finally has a bus route, but it's still like limited. It's not like it's running every 7 minutes like some of the buses here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Like, Nina, I think what you were trying to say earlier is it doesn't matter if they're sex workers or if they're hitchhiking or whatever. doesn't make it their fault. So what the hell?
No, it definitely doesn't make it their fault. And at the end of the day, too, like, if trying to blame a transportation system, if that's an angle anyone ever tries to take, I think is also just horseshit. Because, so what, you have to walk somewhere, which means all of a sudden you're making yourself available for kidnap, for murder? What the hell? No, you're walking somewhere. You should be free in a first world country, in any freaking country, to walk from point A to B.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Right? So, personally, I was just really confused on trying to understand, like, okay, so she was hitchhiking, so what? So she was asking for it? I don't fucking get it. I don't understand where that correlation is, right? Like,
why is that relevant?
What does that matter, right? Oh, well, she just ran away from home. Okay, so you're saying that, and everything that I saw, because I'm not going to talk into any cases or talk about any of the victims' names, because I'm going to leave that up to Beck and Mike. However, a lot of caring families, a lot of family and friends being like, no, this person wouldn't just simply disappear. I saw that, some had children also, love their children. They wouldn't just magically one day decide, you know what, not my life, and fuck off, right? So, yeah. So going back to what I was writing about. The fall of 2005, which is finally when the first cases were tied, and based on a number of different circumstances. In 2007, so another 2 years passed, the RCMP ended up expanding the number of women in their investigation and increased the total kilometers. So originally I mentioned that it's 724 kilometers. In 2007, they actually included 1,500 kilometers, which also now includes parts of Highway 97 and Highway 5. I tried to get an understanding of an exact number of women who disappeared or murdered along the highway, and the number is often just disputed. There's different ideas of women who could have been linked to this. As I mentioned previous, there's certain kilometer ranges that are considered to the Highway of Tears. So there are some cases that are 1 or 2 kilometers outside of that range, which some are tied, some aren't tied. So it's really hard to kind of give an exact number of actual victims. To kind of the most consistent number I was able to find based on from the RCMP website is that they've only acknowledged, and I'm saying only because I think this is very, very low number, 18 murders and disappearances from 1969 to 2006. Looking at some of the Indigenous groups that were posting on the highwayoftears.org, because there's obviously lots of information, they're thinking that that number is a lot closer to 40 and exceeding 40.
Yeah.
An international non-governmental organization that conducts research and advocacy on human rights called the Human Rights Watch actually put together a study showing that British Columbia has the highest rate of unsolved murders of Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Of course, as I mentioned before, this isn't a problem that's unique to just British Columbia. However, British Columbia is considered to be one of the crises among all of Canada, to the point where the federal government in 2015, original case 1969, I'm not going to do the quick math here, but that's a lot of fucking years to pass.
Yeah.
Finally put in a separate inquiry to launch and check into the missing and murdered Indigenous women. Why did it take so long to finally recognize that this is a crisis that's happening? And where are all these women, girls, where are they going?
Mm-hmm.
It's even not necessarily to say that they're all being murdered and whatever, but just where are they? What are the resources? What help do they need? There's just so many unknowns, which makes it really sad.
Mm-hmm.
People are just picked off from their homes and just magically gone. Carolyn Bennett, who is the Federal Minister of Crown for Indigenous Relations, claims that the national number of murdered and missing Indigenous women in Canada is closer to 1,200.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
That's insane. That's just of the number that they have. Who knows how many are still unreported who are falling under that she ran away from home subcategory. And I mean, I don't want to dismiss that, but yeah.
I'm sure it's far higher.
It has to be. Last thing I wanted to mention is before we actually go over a couple of the cases, it's important to acknowledge a lot of the anger and disappointment in the behavior of the RCMP that basically showed, I don't want to use the word urgency, but lack of urgency in actually investigating and trying to find these women, not even necessarily even find them, but take it seriously that they are missing and that something is going on.
Mm-hmm.
We could literally put together an entire episode of just all the shit the RCMP has received in regards of how they've handled some of the individual cases and then the scope of actually admitting that this is a thing. I didn't want to go into it because, as I said, that would just take over everything that we're talking about. And I'm sure Mike and Beck's story, that they'll touch on some of the behavior that the police showed towards the family members who were reporting their daughters, cousins, moms, aunts missing. And one other thing, I did mention earlier that there's Project Ipa. I was a little curious as to why they picked that name for this special kind of force. And when I was able to find that it's actually an Inuit word describing the spiritual goddess that looks after souls just before they go into heaven or reincarnated.
Okay.
Yeah. And then last thing, I keep saying last thing and one more thing, but there's so much on all of this.
Yeah.
When looking at the RCMP website, they have officially listed what criteria cases need to fall under to qualify under the Highway of Tears, kind of under the IPANA investigation. And the 3 points are, the first one is that the victim was involved in a high-risk activity. And for high-risk activity...
hate that. Sorry, Nina, I interrupted you, but...
Yeah, so the high-risk activities that are specifically outlined are hitchhiking or being involved in street work, aka prostitution. That the second one is that the victims was last seen or their body was discovered within 1 mile of Highway 16. As I mentioned, in 2007, that was broadened to include Highway 97 and 5. And the third criteria was that they were just female.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a female hitchhiker on that highway that's gone, you fit into this criteria. And I found it interesting that that's it. That's the criteria. I don't know.
Only one of mine is an IPANA case of the two that I did. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, right, like the RCMP said or is acknowledging only 18 cases where I feel like it's one of those like unwritten or, I don't know, there's obviously fucking more.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? So, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what I've prepared to kind of talk about the history of the Highway of Tears. And I'll pass it on to my wonderful, beautiful, talented co-hosts to talk about some of the specific cases.
I was going to say here, I was just looking quickly to double check on Wikipedia on their Highway of Tears. And there it says the victims are between 18 and 83.
But I think that to me just shows that they have no fucking idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Between 18 and 83. Like, okay, so every single, I mean, I literally just traveled to Alberta 2 weeks ago. So what, I'm in the criteria because I was traveling along that highway and I'm a woman. So I hit 2 out of their 3 markers. Like, how do they,
You weren't hitchhiking. You weren't hitchhiking, were you?
I wasn't.
Assume you weren't hitchhiking.
No, but like I would technically meet 2 out of the 3 criteria.
Yeah.
You'd think it'd be more developed after this many years, this many cases, this much evidence, that they'd have something smarter to say than dangerous activity along the highway, woman.
I think I'll start with the pairing for mine. I picked Bad Tattoo Brewing Company's Westcoast IPA. And I'm just going to show you guys the artwork on the can.
Well, that's beautiful.
I was actually at Bad Tattoo Brewing not that long ago, actually.
Cool.
Yeah, I had that beer before. That's got the nice dark amber color, too. Kind of a mild head going on it.
It's really good, actually.
Nice, especially because it's a Westcoast IPA.
I don't mean to sound surprised. I'm sure that Bad Tattoo Brewing Company makes a lovely beer. It's just that IPAs aren't my fave, usually.
Yeah, they make some really good pizza, too, actually.
Where are they located?
Penticton.
So I'm just going to read the can here. It says, Brilliant Orange Westcoast IPA is rich and weighty with aromas of grapefruit and pine forests, crisp hop bite and lingering finish. To brew truly inspired beers, you need an eclectic team of passionate, somewhat crazy, okay, seriously crazy, thirsty, and unrepentant perfectionists. About the artist, Jeff White, Kettle Valley Tattoo Company, artist and tattooist, says, I hope you enjoyed drinking this beer as much as I enjoyed creating the label. So that's really cool. So this is the artwork is actually by tattooist Jeff
And
White.
it wouldn't be a bad tattoo because it's quite a nice logo.
It is really nice, yeah.
I like that it's like the Indigenous, like inspired look.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was because of the artwork and that it's West Coast that I picked this one.
I might as well. I looked up this beer too on Beer Advocate just because I'm not drinking it currently.
Yeah,
and I just
for sure.
pick a random one here. It says beautiful dark amber, small head, slightly honey and caramel notes, floral, piney, and some tropical fruits. That's what they say. I've seen some other ones too, mentioning more of the bitterness and stuff as well. And it's been a long time since I've had that beer, probably a year. So I don't remember exactly what it tastes like myself, but it sounds about right for what a West Coast IPA is.
So this is a story that I'm calling Justice Traffic Jam. On the Highway of Tears, the only thing not moving quickly is justice.
You got that right.
Preach, sister.
There's been a 82 car pile up and nothing's moving.
Yeah. In October of 1969, Gloria Lavina Moody was on a road trip through the central interior of British Columbia with her family. She was 26 years old and had 2 children. Her kids remained behind in Bella Coola with their aunts, while Gloria was on the road trip with like her brother and mom. So it says family road trip, but it means like her mom and sibling.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, on the night of October 25th, her brother took her out to some of the local bars in Williams Lake, including the Lakeview, the Maple Leaf, and Ranch Hotel. They were together all night, but after leaving the Ranch Hotel, Gloria disappeared. Her brother would later say that he thought she was right behind him and just doesn't know what happened. So he got back to where they were staying, and he thought that she'd been there the whole time, and then she just wasn't there. Like, they left the bar together, and then she was just gone. Gloria's naked body was found the following day by 2 hunters. She was on a cattle trail 10 kilometers outside of Williams Lake. She'd been sexually assaulted, beaten, and was left there alone to bleed to death. I can't even imagine the pain and guilt that her brother must have felt, like knowing that he was the one that had taken her out and that they were together, you know? Not that he was responsible in any way, but it just would be really hard to forgive yourself for something like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know? So Gloria's case was the first of the 18 in the Ipana group that Nina was talking about. Gloria's was the 1969 case that started far too many tragic cases on the Highway of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
And like many of the cases, it was under investigated and remains unsolved. There were no arrests. And in 1998, officer actually went to the family and let them know that all 3 of the main suspects that they had passed away already.
Jeez.
But I mean, that's
too late.
29 years later. Yeah, I'm frustrated because if you look up like the Highway of Tears, there's so much information. But if you're looking up any individual case, I couldn't believe how little information there was.
Yeah, it makes me really, 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 really sad.
But I think that kind of speaks to the fact of where were the police? How does that happen? Like, you have one, I know obviously you shouldn't compare, but like Madeline, right? Whole documentary, disappeared on vacation with her family. There's open cold case investigators. Everyone's so interested into it. Why the hell is this not getting the same attention? What the hell is the difference?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I tried looking up, obviously, her name and then just getting more information through Highway of Tears websites. But it's always like short little paragraphs of each victim. And it's like that amount that I read about Gloria that was what I could find. And that was like a page.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wrong, you know? And there's times where I've done a case and, you know, I have like 9 pages and I have to cut it down because there's so much information.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's horrible. I mean, you guys know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, Mike, you had the same thing with your cases. It's
Yep.
why we're both doing 2 cases, because there's no information out there.
Mine are a bit longer. I purposely found some cases where I could get a little more information. But yeah.
And I mean, that takes us back. Like, I know a couple of episodes ago, we talked about, you know, kind of missing persons, and I covered Natalie Holloway. And there was so much freaking information that I just had to base it off what the FBI was showing on their website, because I couldn't even begin to put everything together with how much there is. So it's, I think it's good for people to get their wheels turning, to start thinking, why is it like that?
Yeah.
Like, Beck, you know, from your case, she wasn't involved in a high-risk activity. What, she was drinking? She was out drinking with her family and was going home?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell? Why wasn't that taken, I don't want to say more seriously, because I don't want to say it wasn't taken seriously because I don't have the facts. But how is there a paragraph? Is her entire life is summed up into one paragraph of her just gone?
Yep.
Doesn't make any sense.
So, and it's not that I didn't find, like, I found information across a lot of different websites, but it was all the same information, you know, worded slightly differently. But I still wanted to cover her case, even though there was a lack of information, because it was the first one, you know?
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that her case is unsolved, as are most of these cases, but there is at least one case that didn't remain unsolved, and that was on August 9th, 1974, which was just 2 months shy of the 5th anniversary of Gloria's death. Colleen Mcmillan was hitchhiking to a friend's house near Lac La Hache. I'm probably not saying that
Lac La Hache.
Hash, dang, I had a 50% chance on that one. Sorry. It's in British Columbia, and while she was hitchhiking there, she disappeared. Her body was later found near a logging road about 25 kilometers south of 100 Mile House. She was only 16. It would take over 37 years to identify the murderer, and by then it was too late to bring him to justice. In May of 2012, DNA evidence linked convicted kidnapper Bobby Jack Fowler to Colleen's death. I will be calling him BJ from now on, just to be insulting. He died in an Oregon prison in 2006. So by the time the evidence had linked him, he'd actually been dead for 6 years. He had no criminal record in Canada, but had a lengthy record in the States, including sexual and violent assaults, as well as weapons offenses. Since the DNA link was found, police have been working on a timeline of his movements over the past 40 years to see if he could be linked to any of the other Highway of Tears cases. I tried to find more information about how that's going, but couldn't really find anything, except that he's a strong suspect in the deaths of Gail Ways and Pamela Darlington, which were both cases on the Ipa list that occurred in the 70s. And he remains a suspect in 10 other cases. When I was doing my research, I was surprised to learn that investigators have identified 1,413 persons of interest over the years. About 90% of those have been removed from suspicion, but that still leaves like 140 people
Jeez.
to be a suspect in something like this, and that there's still 140 dirtbags on the list, you know? According to Staff Sergeant Wayne Clary of the RCMP Major Crime Unit, there are 3 or 4 strong suspects amongst this group of 140. We were talking about the number of victims earlier, and like Nina said, there's 18 on this Ipa list, but yeah, there could be hundreds. What did you say, Nina, like 1,200 or something?
1,200.
Yeah.
No, that they're saying is known projection across Canada.
Right. So more information is still desperately needed to get justice for these victims. And the IPANA has a tip line, and it's 1-877-543-4822. And their website says there is no tip that is too insignificant to report. So if you know like anything at all, you should call. And we're going to post that on the website.
Yes.
But yeah, I had a hard time getting more information about these women. And there was some stuff that I did have more written, to be honest, but then it was some stuff that Nina mentioned, and I don't want to be repetitive. So.
Yeah. It's so sad that, like, for all these cases, there's so little information about their family life, who they are.
Yep.
Totally. It starts when they were abducted or they were murdered, which is really sad because I want to be able to share who this person was and give them a face, give them a story, and it's so hard to do because there's just nothing out there.
Yeah, so I'm sad that this was so short.
But I think that just speaks to the problem.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, even for someone if someone thinks they might know something and you think you saw something weird, I mean, how do you corroborate that when there's nothing out there to confirm what you think you may know or don't know, right? I don't know.
Right.
Like last seen in white shirt, blue jeans, whatever. When I was looking, I couldn't even find half of that. Right? So
yeah,
definitely really shitty.
Absolutely. Alrighty. All right, well, I guess I'll start with the beer pairing too, considering I've got two stories. So the name of my beer, again, is not the pairing itself. I know that's kind of a cheat, but the beer is called Viewfield. It's from Driftwood Brewing. It's a Brett Saison, but the picture is what really did it for me. It is a very Indigenous inspired butterfly or moth, I'm not sure. And I'll take a picture of this, but I'll share it on Zoom right now with the two of you.
They always have amazing artwork.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So that's why I did this beer. The beer says funky, fruity, panoramic fermentation in ultra-high def multicolor. We hope you enjoy every aspect of Saison brewed from this perspective, which is actually probably their worst write-up on a can, unfortunately, because it doesn't tell you anything about the beer.
No.
But I'm sure Julie's listening, and I'm sure this beer is really good. So I'm just pouring it out right now.
Looks lovely hazy color. Oh, you did what I did. You almost over.
Caught it.
Excited.
Brett Saisons are often really, really carbonated, so I should have known to pour it really lightly, and I didn't. So it's got a beautiful kind of like light yellow color, huge fluffy white head. It's got a citrusy nose a little bit. It's kind of got that funk, the barnyard funk that you get from Brett. People say horse blanket. I don't know what the fuck a horse blanket smells like, but it's a little funky. It
smells like hay and horse.
It's a little bit of hay and horse then. It's definitely fruity. Yeah, no, it's got a really nice like fruit aroma. It's not super sweet, but it's like mildly sweet. The flavor is kind of grainy. It's got like a lemony pucker to it. Bit of that funk that you expect from a Brett Saison or Brettanomyces.
Fancy.
Of course, you can say that word. Brettanomyces.
Took me years to figure it out. Yeah, it's kind of like that citrus lemon funk, earthiness, a little bit of grains. It's super easy drinking. It's not a really like weird beer. It might be a little too tart from the citrus for some people, but it's nice. I'm glad too that this comes in cans and probably 4-packs. I just bought a single because this kind of beer used to only come in like a 750 milliliter bottle, the big ones with a cork and cage, or sometimes a 650 milliliter bomber. Sometimes you want just a 473 milliliters or a 500 milliliter can. And this one's 6.3% alcohol. I didn't write this really. I kind of got into it a little bit. But the saddest part of my first case that I'm going to cover is there is not one photograph on the internet of the woman I'm going to cover. Not one.
Wow.
Like, how?
Or not how. Why?
Yeah.
They know what happened to her, but she's a murdered woman in BC. Why has a photo not been released of her to let people know who she was and what happened to her? It's weird.
It's not like family choice or anything?
Maybe, because I can't find any information about her family. Really.
Oh.
So I don't know.
I mean, I'm not surprised you can't find the information because going to Beck's point, right? But
It's not a new situation in this whole thing.
You would think
it's like a lack of information is causing further lack of information. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mike, before I know you're obviously going to get into it, but like, was she recovered or is she still a missing person?
She was actually never missing. This was just a straight up murder on the Highway of Tears. So
okay, because I was going to say, like, for the ones where we can't find photos and they're missing, how the hell is anyone supposed to identify them if they do see them? Yeah. Assuming that they aren't murdered or something like that, and that they quote unquote just ran away from home, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Just food for thought.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Mike. I'll let you do your stuff.
Corinne Thomas was a 21-year-old Indigenous woman in 1976 who was only days from her due date. She lived in Stony Creek Reserve, about 15 kilometers, 9 miles from northern BC town of Vanderhoof. Just to give people an idea for distances, Vanderhoof is 10-hour drive from Vancouver, or 876 kilometers, 544 miles from Vancouver, and is almost in line with the southern part of the Alaska Panhandle. People that don't know, Alaska comes quite a ways down the BC coast. Stony Creek Reserve had a population of around 300. Crane had been attending a street dance with a bunch of friends in Vanderhoof on July 3rd, 1976. Her friends and her had planned to party, so they had booked a hotel room in town. Her and her friends were drinking after the street dance back at the hotel. Crane would leave the hotel room for a time and leave the hotel sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. She had lost her room key at some point, and because of this, the hotel refused to let her into her room.
Do you have a system for that?
Can't you just show ID being like, no, it is me, I'll pay the $20 for a new card?
They wouldn't let her in.
I'm sure it would have been like a key, an actual key.
Unfortunately, it speaks to something other than just someone losing their key. John Fute, who had some relation to the hotel, said that he had seen Corinne sometime after 1 a.m. in the lobby, and she seemed sober, but she would later be deemed to have a blood alcohol content of 0.19. The legal limit now is in BC is 0.018, so she was definitely drunk. Now that she no longer had a room, she would have to walk or hitchhike back to the reserve. What would be a 3-hour walk?
That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Show your ID that you're in that room. Open the fucking door. I don't understand how that hotel, God forbid, isn't somehow liable.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And like drunk female, male, whatever. You're just going to be like, yeah, sorry, walk home when all your shit's in the room. Oh, well, obviously they would have gotten an earful from me.
Yeah.
Especially if I was drunk. Are you kidding me?
So who turns away a drunk person, let alone a woman they know is a paying customer? I want to just point out, no matter what they thought, she was also very pregnant. She doesn't deserve whatever happens to her. She was pregnant. Maybe she didn't make the best decision drinking as an expecting mother, but that's beside the point.
It's still not her fault.
Yeah, still not her fault.
Becoming
whatever.
a victim, still not her fault.
They should have just let her back into her room. They knew she was a customer. They knew who she was.
They knew she was a guest.
Yeah.
But because she lost the key, they wouldn't let her into the room?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Did she pay? Okay.
Yes.
Well, charge her for another key and don't be a dick about it.
But that's exactly it, right? It's an Indigenous woman in town who's drunk. They don't want to deal with her, so they just kick her out.
Bullshit.
Yep. Unfortunately, that was not the case this night, and her and her friends got on the road to the reserve, just off of Highway 16, the Highway of Tears. The group had their thumb up to try and hitchhike on their way back, and they had a yellow car, possibly a Datsun, drive by. It swerved to stay away from the group as it drove by, though. Unfortunately, the next car to come by didn't go the same way. Richard Redekop had been in Vanderhoof drinking that night and was now heading home to his rural home the family had. So he lived with his family. When he and his girlfriend saw the group, they slowed their car down to what they claim was 20 miles per hour, or 32 kilometers an hour. This is far enough back that we were in miles per hour. And then sped back up to 30 miles per hour, or 50 kilometers an hour, as they approached the group. This is where stories diverge. Richard Redekop claims that Corinne jumped in front of his car to play chicken. This story does not line up with other people that were walking on the road trying to get rides back home, though. What did happen is that he swerved his car to hit Corinne head on. Richard Reddekopp would then claim that he stopped the car, got out, and frantically asked people to get an ambulance, and when they didn't, they left to get one. And this is before cell phones, so his fake story sounds like it could be realistic back then. Corinne and her unborn child would both die on the scene. This family does not have a good track record either, as Richard's little brother, Stanley Reddekopp, struck and killed Larry Thomas, cousin of Corinne, only 2 years before.
What?
We do know that Richard claims to have drank 6 beer before getting into his car, though, with a blood alcohol level of the legal limit now. I don't know what it was back then. Multiple witnesses would be taken into police department for witness statements. The kids were all under the age of 16 and would be put through 3 hours of interrogations without parental supervision, which is bullshit. In the end, the police would coerce false statements out of these kids that would claim that Corinne was playing chicken with the car. A formal public inquiry would prove that the truck swerved into Corinne, though. This is a quote from an article from Maclean's magazine, and I will warn you, some of the language is definitely dated. Reserve representatives charged that local white youth of the classic punk variety consistently speed around town playing chicken with the natives, walking the 9 miles back to the reserve, deliberately pointing their cars at them. They say that there have been incidents at one of the two towns' hotels where Indians, drunk to the point of incapacitation, are served still more drinks by an indifferent hotel manager, then thrown bodily out. Again, this is a quote. There have also been fights between Indians and whites. Richard Reddekopp faces trial December 16 on charges of assaulting a native woman with an aluminum crutch. But the natives say that numerous complaints have been ignored by the RCMP. So, yes, some of the language I wouldn't use now, but...
Yeah, pretty cringy.
This is something that happens nonstop in this area between the Indigenous people and the white people that live in the area, which is just fucking awful. And again, this is not current. I don't know if it's still happening. I have my feelings, though.
But, like, even them knowing that they're playing chicken and da-da-da-da, that is fucking wrong. Do something about it. Address it. Set up a trap. Like, what do you mean, oh, kids will be kids? No. That's not fun playing. One side isn't having a good time.
It's terrorism.
But if I saw a car coming towards me, I would not be impressed. And that's just like, well, it's what they do, you know, they're just playing chicken.
That's what they do because you're letting them get away with that. It's straight up physically threatening. That's not legal.
It's straight up terrorism. They're trying to put fear into the Indigenous community there. They're trying to scare them. It's horrible.
Well, it's like, and maybe we can cut this part out if I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but it's like systematic racism, right? Like,
yep.
That's okay. That's what we do. That's just what our parents did, what our grandparents did, so now we do this on the roads and just fuck with them.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about? It's disgusting.
Yeah. So white members of the community would claim that Indigenous people would always play chicken with people. This also came from the RCMP, which I wish I could say I was surprised. After the coroner, Eric Turner, interviewed some witnesses and read the findings from the police, he deemed this an unfortunate accident. Bullshit.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. This is the same coroner that deemed that the death of Larry Thomas was also blameless. Only after the former chief of Stony Creek Reserve, Sophie Thomas, sent in a written request and claims of harassment against Indigenous people made the rounds did the coroner change his mind and call for an inquest. Eric was to observe the inquest until it came out that he had a conviction for a hit and run 11 years before and stepped aside. So this guy's just as fucking dirty. Supervising coroner Glenn McDonald of Vancouver would take over. He asked to have 6 jurors, 3 being Indigenous background and then 3 others that were white, because that was the breakdown of the area, right? There wasn't a lot of other ethnicities up there at the time. There were threats of trouble in the community from the Stony Creek Reserve at the time. On more than one occasion, groups of Indigenous people would drive by the Reddekopp family home and shout murderers at them. This was very distressing to their mother, Linda Reddekopp, as the same night Corinne died, her daughter died from complications of a car accident.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible that her son did that, but that poor mother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even with the inquest being done, the Crown did not bother to charge Richard. It is sad to see this systemic racism at work, as Corrine deserved justice, as did her cousin and her whole family and community. She was targeted because she was Indigenous, and she was an easy target.
Right, and to Nina's point, why the hell wasn't she sleeping it off at the hotel that she fucking paid for?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what, are they going to refuse her fucking service? It's like, the reason we got the hotel so that we don't have to do this trek, because who cares what the fuck the reason was that they got the hotel? Yeah. If you're paying and your good hard-earned money is there, your property's in there, give me another fucking key.
Yeah.
Or escort me to the room and I'll show you my ID, or whatever the case scenario may be. It makes no fucking sense. And I hope whoever at the hotel genuinely is having a second look at themselves and realizing that, I don't want to say it's their fault, but they sure as shit put her in a situation.
They've got blood on their hands.
I think that's tough, but they definitely put her into a situation that she would not have been otherwise if they considered a more humane approach. Like, sure, show us ID, because obviously her name must be on record when renting a room.
Yep.
Well, they knew they knew exactly who she was. They knew she had a room.
Yeah, in such a small area, with the population being so small.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everyone, you know?
Yep.
Especially if you're in a service industry job.
Exactly. So to finish the story, here is another quote. The Reddit cops freely admit that their sons are scrappers. They walk around with their fists up, says their mother, but they are appalled at the accusation the Indian community has leveled at them. So she freely admits that her sons are shitheads. But, they wouldn't have done that. Like, fuck that. These kids are trouble, and they're causing trouble. And they murdered someone. Well, murdered 2 people, likely. But no one's ever been charged. Which is gross.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Neither do I. So for this case, there actually are photos, which will be on the website. There's a little more information about my next victim, but still not a ton, which really bums me out. So Alberta Gail Williams, 24, and her sister Claudia lived in downtown Vancouver, and in 1989 they decided to pack up and take a seasonal job in northern BC to take a break from the hustle and bustle of city life. I can't seem to find out where the 2 ladies are from or any real information about their younger life, but Alberta would have been born in and around 1965. The little bit of information I could find is that both of their parents worked full-time. The 2 never spent time in any Canadian residential schools or spent any time in any kind of child welfare groups. The 2 ladies graduated from high school and both worked full-time. Neither did drugs, and both only drank on special occasions. That's literally the only information I can find out about them and their childhood, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
And that's more than I could find for almost any case on this list. The 2 ladies hit the road and made their way to Prince Rupert, a short 1,494 kilometers or 926-mile drive that, as of writing, would take 16 hours and 17 minutes straight driving. But that was fairly late at night, so it'll probably be longer during the day. This is actually part of British Columbia that I really want to visit, and it is beyond beautiful from the photos that I've seen, and I can understand why the ladies would have wanted to try the way of life up there.
So much quieter.
And Rupert's right on the water. It's beautiful. There's just so much nature. There's less people.
Yeah.
The ladies were almost done working in Prince Rupert as the summer was almost over. And on their last weekend, they decided to go out to the bar with a bunch of people that they had been working with at the cannery that they were working at. The night was getting late and the pub was about to close, and Alberta came to her sister and said that she was going to head to a house party and asked her to come. Claudia would ask where it was and turned for a second to talk to someone else. She couldn't remember who it was that she turned to. When she turned back around, Alberta was gone, and so were the whole group she had been hanging out with. It would turn out that the house party that she was going to was at her Uncle Jack's house. So I guess she's got some family up in the area. I don't know. The date was August 25th, 1989. After she went missing, Jack would head to a birthday party for his mother-in-law soon after the day of the party and appeared to be acting nervously. The group would question him as they knew Alberta was missing. Not long after, Jack would flee town. This was either because of the trouble he was having with the local RCMP or the family over the situation, so who knows. From an article on jessicalal.com, quote, Alberta's close friend Geraldine says that her Uncle Jack was acting very strange that night at the bar. He was quite possessive of Alberta and acting almost like a boyfriend. He would be watching her and asking her what she was doing when she went outside, which according to Geraldine seemed quite suspicious. Definitely seems suspicious to me.
Ew.
Yeah. Move forward to August 25th, 1989. Alberta's body was found near an overpass around 40 kilometers or 24 miles away from Prince Rupert. She had been both sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Claudia says she knows exactly who murdered her sister. Claudia had a guy that would not leave her alone all summer, even though she had a boyfriend. So these are quotes as well. Oh, are you still going out with so-and-so, referring to her boyfriend at the time? I said, no, I'm not, I said. You know what? You want to find him? Just go downtown. That's where he spends all of his time if you're so interested in him. And then he kind of just looked at me and drove off, she recalled. Next time I see him, he says, get in the car. I said, no, leave me alone. And I went walking towards a strange house. And then he drove off. I told the police all of this. That's the end of the quote. The night of the murder, this guy was hanging out at the pub that the sisters were drinking at. He did his best to annoy Alberta at the bar, and she ignored him. That wasn't until later in the night when Claudia would see the two talking together. To this day, she knows his name and sees him around the province once in a while, but the RCMP that are tasked to the Ipa project have asked her to keep the name to herself and the investigators. So here's some more quotes from Claudia. I can't divulge his name. I'm not gonna. It's hard. I mean, I may be overstepping my boundaries here, or by doing that, where it's gonna jeopardize the case, she said. I can't really say anything about names. I can just say how far the police have gone, how little they've done.
God, that must be so hard for her to respect what they've asked her to do while seeing that they're not doing as much as they should.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Or anything for that matter of fact.
At least in her eyes, nothing.
Right.
Which I agree with, but at least in her eyes. The RCMP have told Claudia that this man was one of the suspects in the case. So she wasn't out of line thinking this. So this is more from Claudia again. To them it doesn't even matter, she said, referring to the fact that the police have yet to find Alberta's killer or killers. As long as you're First Nations, it doesn't matter. I see that happen so many times in Vancouver, where I live, Claudia said. One person who is not First Nations goes missing, that's broadcast all over Canada. And we saw that last year, right?
Yeah.
All these days, this is still an unsolved case. Let that set in. Claudia knows a likely suspect, and her Uncle Jack is also a suspect of interest, and nothing. In September 2017, 28 years after her murder, there would be a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. Claudia would head to Smithers, BC, a town in northern BC, to give her testimony. She would ask Gary Kerr, a former investigator of her sister's case, for the RCMP to join her for her testimony. They had not seen each other in person for just under 30 years, but Kerr would be quoted as saying, "I'm so glad to be here with you." The last time the two had seen each other was when Claudia came into the RCMP station with her parents about the case.
Wow.
So this last little bit here is from a CBC article. While people milled around the terminal, pulling suitcases off the carousel and cleaning out into the parking lot, Kerr and Williams stood chatting. Claudia introduced her to her family, her grandsons, already playing with the toys she had handed to him when she got off the plane. "I'm so grateful you don't even know how much it means to me," Williams told Kerr before leaving. "It means a lot to me too," he said. "It's been a lot of years, and it's for Alberta and for the family and for myself too. It's a chance to have Alberta's story told, and it needs to be told." The National Inquiry team is in Smithers for 3 days of community hearings this week. It's the second stop of its kind since the inquiry began over a year ago. Williams and Kerr are scheduled to testify Wednesday afternoon. Sadly, still today, in 2020, there is no closure to this case. This cold case needs to be closed. If you have any information on this case, call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. That's 8477. This phone line takes tips in 117 different languages, So if you have information, there is no excuse. And that's my case.
Wow.
But it's just so sad. I mean, just every story, right? There's just no information. There's no justice. There's just open-ended cases.
I wonder, like, is it because of, obviously, I think the police didn't do a very good job, but it sounds like many of the cases that they were not, I don't even want to say mishandled. I just think, like, not even handled.
Yeah, not handled, yeah.
I don't know. I wonder, do they think it's a serial killer? Do they think it's just one person? Do you think it's a bunch of random people who are doing this? Or, like, how are the cases linked other than the, the three criteria, so to say, right? Like,
well, there's definitely at least one serial killer linked to the Highway of Tears from the States. So there's probably more than one, truthfully. You just have to look at how it was dealt with Willie Pickton in Vancouver, killing all of the sex workers, mostly Indigenous women. People just didn't give a fuck because it was just a bunch of street workers, it was sex workers, it was Indigenous women, and he got away with it for so long. And this is in the middle of nowhere. There's less people to see it. It's just sad.
But what does that matter?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's systemic racism. It's people looking down on a profession because they don't think that sex workers are people. It's just the same story over and over again. It's just bullshit. Doesn't matter what you do for work. It doesn't matter who you are. You're a person. You matter. And that's not what's happening.
I mean, Beck's story, out with her brother. Your story, refused at a hotel that she paid to stay at.
Yeah.
Like, we're not saying dangerous activity. So what? Her dangerous activity was that the hotel refused her.
Yeah.
Therefore, she had to hitchhike to get home. Fuck. Right? Like, come on.
Or a woman and her sister at a pub having a party with her people she's worked with for the whole summer, and then going to a house party that was at her uncle's, and then going missing. Like, that is not a dangerous thing to do. It's just not, right?
But Nina, how many times have you and I been out drinking with work people? It shouldn't be a dangerous activity.
No.
We're going to have a couple drinks with work people. No big deal. Or in Gloria's case, she went out with her brother, like you said. They weren't hitchhiking.
No.
They were walking back to their accommodations, and she fucking disappeared. Like, it could be anyone.
Sure could.
I think that's what's even more terrifying about it, because there's so much, I don't want to say randomness, but randomness happening. Why isn't someone considering that this could be a part of a bigger problem?
Yeah. And I don't know what her name is. I don't want to pry, but one of my mother-in-law's friends, she was living up in the northern BC, got into a truck driver's truck and was never seen again. So, I mean, I do have a connection to the case, but I'm not going to, it's too painful for her. She doesn't want to talk about it, and I'm not going to pry. But, I mean, it touches people all over the province, all over the place, right?
Well, and I think, too, like, obviously this isn't just an issue that British Columbia is experiencing. It definitely is a nationwide thing, but obviously for us it is a close to home kind of scenario. And it's interesting because definitely before doing the research and actually like taking the time to look into this thoroughly, and I'm using air quotes, I didn't understand how stupid this is. Like, why is this not a thing? How is this not being treated? Imagine that this happened anywhere else and that it was 5 random white women.
Yep.
Is that really what it is? Is it because they're Indigenous? Is that why, I don't want to say no one cares, but why it wasn't considered as important to locate them, to figure out who is the murderer? Who is this? What the hell is going on? What is it? I don't know.
Unfortunately, it definitely seems like it. It's going on this long and so few have been solved.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot more work that needs to be done to understand why certain decisions were made as they were made. Obviously, I know times have changed and things are different now, but I don't think that this isn't I think it's an ongoing crisis, obviously, right? Like, so.
Yeah.
And for that matter, it's not just Canada. We're covering this because we're in Canada, but Indigenous women especially, but Indigenous people all over the world are targeted all the time. And it doesn't stop, and it needs to stop. I mean, I've heard just how, we all know how it's happened in the States. I've heard just how racist it is over in like Australia against their Indigenous people. It's not just Canada.
No.
And it needs to stop everywhere. They're people. They were there first. Like,
yeah.
Stop being racist against them. Try to learn their culture. Try to find out what they're like.
Sorry,
stop being racist.
Racist.
Stop.
Oh yeah, stop being racist. Full stop.
I don't even think against them, against anything. I think it's just like everyone is born into the world equally.
Yeah.
I mean, some are birthed, some get a cesarean section, fine. I get it. Same. You're born into the world, and what the fuck is the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And it's just, obviously I don't want to get into everything that's going on in the world right now and in the States, because that's a tangent that I'm sure many of us can go on and that touch us very differently. But I was just struggle understanding. And obviously I'm an immigrant to Canada.
Yeah.
I immigrated here. I wasn't born in this country. And I love this country, and I love the people, and I love the different people I've been exposed to. And I have such a hard time understanding how people can hate each other just because someone said something, and now you're going to generalize that one person's action speaks for their entire family, for their entire culture, and all of that. I don't fucking get it personally, and I have a hard time with it. But yeah, that's the end of my rant for that.
I would say just go out and talk to a neighbor that sounds, looks, whatever different than you, and try to learn about them and learn about what they think and, you know, what they value. Because I bet you anything, a lot of those things are going to be exactly.
But be like 6 feet away from them when you do it.
Well, yeah, currently because of COVID, be 6 feet away.
Yeah.
Or wear a mask.
Don't be a dick.
Still. But try to learn out. Try to learn about what makes them tick, what they believe in, what they feel. I'm an atheist, but find out what they believe in, like religion-wise, whatever. See what makes them tick. Because you'll probably find out you're really similar, no matter who you are. And those differences actually make you stronger, usually. Because it'd be so fucking boring if we were all exactly the same.
So boring.
Yeah.
There can only be one Nina, so I would like to think I'm the unicorn of this world, and I just want me. But you guys know what I'm saying, right? Like,
there's a fuck ton of mics, but I'm a unique mic.
But I think like it's hard, right? Like I think it's hard for some people to go search for information for diversity. But at the end of the day, just don't be a fucking dick. If you see something that you don't think is right, say something.
Yes.
Do something. It's funny, actually. It's not funny. I had someone recently was in a conversation. We were talking about homelessness. And this person was under the impression that they thought they saw someone who was overdosing. And I was like, what did you do? Well, I walked by. It's like, what do you mean you walked by? It's a fucking human.
Yeah, call an ambulance. Do something.
So even be like, hey, are you okay? Like, walked by, and it really upset me. And I called my friend out. I was like, what do you mean you just walked by? Well,
what does it cost you to do something? What does it cost you to say, are you okay? Do you need help?
And not just that, like if someone's overdosing, we're in British Columbia. I just quickly Googled, and according to this, you can get naloxone kits at any pharmacy in the community in British Columbia. So you can take home kits free of charge. So if someone's overdosing on opiates, you can save them for free.
This person, I don't know if that person was or not, but I think it was more of the like bystander effect. Like, oh, that person doesn't look so good. And you keep walking. Yeah. Stand up and say something, right? Obviously, this doesn't tie necessarily too much to the case, but
in general,
you know what? You're walking and you see that some car is weaving and trying to fuck with some people who are walking on a sidewalk. Report it. Yeah. Do something about it. Talk about it so people realize that it's fucking wrong. It is wrong, but I think unless we get that conversation going, how are people going to drill it through their thick fucking skulls that like, oh, this isn't normal? You mean I'm not supposed to scare people who are walking? Trying to get to work? Trying to get to fucking home? Who fucking knows? It doesn't matter where they're going, but anyways.
I get what you're saying. You're like, change happens when the first person says, hey, this isn't okay.
This is fucked up.
And it starts a conversation, you know? And somebody has to be the first one to say something.
Yep.
So why not you, right?
Why not us?
Why not you? And
you,
if you
as a general statement, I mean, it could be
understand.
you. It could be anybody.
And if it can't be you, just don't be a dick. Just be nice.
Yeah.
If you can't be that game changer, which not everyone can do confrontation, not everyone can do that, and that is fucking fine. But don't be a dick is just how we're going to end that. I'm going to end my rant.
So thanks for tuning in. You can find us at brewcrime.com. You can go find us on any social media at brewcrime. You can email us at brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. You can buy our swag from brewcrime.threadless.com, and I just added to the store yesterday. You can now buy Brewcrime masks if you want to get a mask themed with our podcast on it. And if you want to support the show and help us make the show even better, you can go to patreon.com/brewcrime. Supporters get ad-free episodes, and if you support us at a certain level, you get 1 episode a month of Patreon-only content. So shout out to our Patreon supporters. We got True Crime Nana, Daniela, Ange, Nina's Mom, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, the faves of our live podcast. Cheers.
Bye.
Brewcrime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design was by Ben Greenberg. All cases and stories were written by Beck, Nina, and Mike, and our sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at brewcrime.threadless.com, where you can purchase swag like t-shirts, phone cases, beach towels, and all kinds of cool stuff. We can also be found on your favorite podcast apps, our hosts, Spreaker.com, or Brewcrime.com, as well as at Brewcrime on Twitter, at Brewcrime on Facebook, at Facebook.com/groups/Brewcrime. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Pacific Beer Chat.
Do you have an obsession with true crime? Are you intrigued by the mystery and the rabbit holes surrounding unsolved cases? And can you appreciate the snark and humor of an exhausted mother of 2 young children? Then you should click subscribe to Naptime Nancy podcast. Throw on some Baby Shark for your kids or pet or partner. Slide your headphones on and join me as I talk some true crime during nap time. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Audio Boom, and other listening apps.
Yes, sir.
It's all this sir shit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, sir.
That sounds weird. Sure.
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 Okay.
All right, let's get this intro going then. What was I going to say?
So, yeah, I thought that through. Cool. Are we ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
I guess, Mike, you can't really talk more about it.
No, that's why I kind of gave that little review that I just found on Beer Advocate, because I can't drink it to try it right now. Oh, just pause for a second. I'm going to have to restart Zoom here because it says we got 10 minutes left.
Okay, Beck wants to go first.
Well, just because the first case I'm doing is the first case.
Yep, you go first. Okay. That makes sense. Let me grab another beer.
So yeah, I actually poured the rest of that in here. I like it. I gave Adam some to try, but good. I don't mind it.
Score.
Sorry, it's so dark here. It's just, yeah.
I almost want to turn my light off because it's so friggin' warm in here. Oh, did we lose Beck? There you are.
No, I was trying to do a picture, but it's not letting me while I'm in Zoom.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Just save it for later.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
I did actually do this. Where did it go? Where's my mic?
Oh, yeah, that's not a great picture.
Not really. I tried. Your beer looks amazing up on the windowsill there. It's glowing. Yeah. Everything else is black and it's glowing.
Yeah.
We've really gotten back to our brew part crimes.
Just one sec.
No worries.
Interesting.
Her brother would later say that he thought, nope, I already said that. Sorry, dudes. So what I didn't, I can't talk, sorry.
I was like, is it cutting out or are you?
No.
Are you restarting?
No. I'm frustrated because
the Matrix just went. Boop.
It's warm.
Yeah, it's warm. Fuck. What is the temperature right now? Yesterday was so fucking hot.
It's supposed to be 30 tomorrow.
Oh, it's down. It was 30 yesterday here, but it's only 20 right now. What do you think of this last name? F-U-I-T-E. Fute?
F-U what?
F-U-I-T-E.
F-U-I-T. Fute, yeah.
Yeah, Fute.
All right, I'm going to pause at that sentence because it's telling me we have a fucking 10-minute limit again. I'm going to go upgrade to Zoom because this is stupid.
Okay, but...
Give me a second, sorry. You won't feel any better here either. Sorry.
What?
I said you won't feel any better with this one.
Okay.